patient, a 35-year-old man. He is known to be COVID positive, and he's admitted to the medicine floor. He traveled back from the States about 14 days ago and became symptomatic about 5 days ago, admitted with progressive shortness of breath. So he's been on about 5 liters of oxygen, and you've noticed in the past few hours that he's been working a lot harder to breathe, and he just pulled the call bell. So, going into
So at this point in our mock code blue, the patient nurse is checking for responsiveness, and the patient who just pulled the call bell, she has called the code blue because she's found him unresponsive. This has been going out overhead, and she's notified her team. She is now doffing her gear because she was in droplet and now needs to get into airborne gear. She does not begin CPR in the room, as at this point it is considered an aerosol generating procedure, and she needs to switch into her aerosol PPE. You can see here the rest of the floor team is getting prepared, donning aerosol generating medical procedure PPE, what we'll call in the future here hot PPE. We have a safety officer here who is guiding the patient nurse through her doffing step by step in a Simon Says fashion. So the floor team continues to get donned in an effort to get someone rapidly into the room with the proper PPE in order to begin CPR. The man in blue there has just arrived. He is the team leader for the Code Blue team. So he is a consulting internist from the Emerge who's been dispatched up from the Emerge to one of the patient rooms. This is one of the ICU nurses who's also part of the Code Blue team, who's just arriving and starting to put on PPE. You can see that one of the first floor nurses
anesthesia arrives.
Is just about to enter the room. Here we have RT arriving, as well as the anesthetist. So the safety officer is now checking the donning of the gear. So doing a safety check, she's optimizing wrist coverage there, and she will only allow people in once she has verified their PPE. Kind of like a bouncer at an exclusive club, she's checking ID and she's making sure that they're up to the dress code. If they fail anything on her check, they are not allowed in the room. So the first nurse has come in, she's brought the defibrillator and found this patient. She puts the pads on and immediately begins CPR. You can see here again the safety officer is checking each member before they enter the room in order to clear them. Very dangerous if someone enters the room and their N95 has not been seal tested, for instance. So she's starting top to bottom systematically every time, checking the bouffant, checking that the face shield is tipped down, that the N95 has been seal tested, that the gown is on appropriately tightly at the neck, and she's optimizing everybody's wrist coverage at the gloves. So we now have 2 nurses in the room, one doing CPR, one on the defibrillator, and that third nurse is getting in line to help with compressions. This is the team leader. His PPE is being optimized by the safety officer. So his gown is a little bit loose, he had a lot of neck exposed, so the safety officer is fixing that and optimizing his wrist coverage. Basically everybody can do with a little help covering their wrists up, especially if your institution doesn't have extended gloves. The anesthetist is just arriving there. The team leader is assessing the situation, introducing himself, and getting some clinical information about the patient as the defibrillator is being turned on. The rhythm is being checked at this time as soon as the defibrillator is on. Okay, so CPR is paused. They find that the patient is in ventricular fibrillation and a 300 joule shock is administered. Our ICU nurse has arrived and has begun charting. So there are 2 ICU nurses that are dispatched to a Code Blue special in our institution. Anesthesia has meanwhile been cleared and entered the room and are preparing to intubate. So typically in an ACLS approach, the airway has really been de-emphasized. Quality compressions and early defibrillation are what is stressed. in a code blue special or protected code blue, intubation early on is very important, and that is largely for provider safety, because once the tube is in, the cuff is up, and a viral filter is on, the airway, which is what is doing the aerosolization, is sealed off from the providers. So here we see anesthesia proceeding to intubate. And there's a couple details here that are important. So the first thing that happens once the tube is through the cords is that the balloon on the EPT is blown up to seal off the airway. Okay, that's done before the stylet is removed. And as soon as the stylet comes out, we're hooking that green viral filter onto the ETT. And at this point only are we bagging our patient. To confirm placement of the tube, we can feel the chest for bilateral chest rise rather than auscultating, because a stethoscope isn't allowed in the room, as well as making sure that the tube is at the correct position of about 22 centimeters at the incisors. So we are fast forwarding here a little bit for the sake of running through the simulation exercise a bit more quickly, and so we've advanced for about 10 minutes, and the patient has unfortunately not responded well to resuscitation, is now in an asystole. So the team leader is talking with his team, and they have decided that it is time to call this code, that there are no further actions that can be done.
So this is the time of death. Okay, so code's finished.
Okay, and a brief moment of silence should be taken for our patients, maybe 5, maybe 10 seconds, just to recognize the life that's been lost. At this point, they need to decide on who is leaving the room first. We have about 8 people in the room that need to leave one by one, and so we generally say that the compressor should be the first people out, because they are hot and sweaty and have been working hard in that PPE and are probably the most uncomfortable. So the officer, or that safety officer, is coaching this compressor through every single stage of their PPE, so that the cognitive burden is off of them. You can see in the rest of the room, everyone's got their hands folded on their chest. This is because when we've been in there and it's hot and uncomfortable, there's a real temptation once the resuscitation is over to do something stupid like touch your face or adjust your mask. So at this point, we are sort of breaking the fidelity of the simulation. In the interest of time, we're having everybody leave the room, and each person gets the chance to be a officer and coach the removal of the PPE by the other participant in a Simon Says fashion.
Simon Says.
And so here you can see Ginny Kim, who is going to be leading the person doffing through their doffing procedure. So they're starting with the gloves, and Ginny is explaining step by step how to remove the gloves. Hand hygiene is very important. Check our other videos out for the COVID scrub, but she's leading him through this hand washing routine, which gets every single possible surface of the hands cleaned. Very important that we don't just scrub for 15 seconds, but that we use those 15 seconds wisely to really get our hand sanitizer on every possible surface that could become contaminated. For the sake of speed, the other hand hygienes may be done in simply by doing a clap to indicate the 7 steps, but we like to do a spaced repetition with our hand hygiene so that participants in this course get a chance to drill it multiple times and turn it into muscle memory. You'll see there's a cue here to keep eye contact with the dofficer, so Ginny is directing her doffer to do that while removing the gown, because there's a real tendency to slump the chin onto the chest when that's happening. So that was the COVID scrub indicated by the clap there. Proceeding to remove the bouffant carefully. Another COVID scrub indicated by a clap. And so throughout this, you can actually hear Ginny saying Simon Says. So this is something that we teach in the course, because again, we're not simply observing or supervising. We're actually leading the participant through their doffing. They've just been in a high stress, high stakes environment. They're sweaty, they're dehydrated. They want to get out of that room as fast as possible. And so we need to slow them down and remove that cognitive burden of doffing. to make sure that they do it 100% safe 100% of the time. Thank you for